Today we're going to look at doing a design which is similar to this one here. We're just going to do it on a rectangular piece of paper rather than a square. And I'm going to do it in black and white today, but you can do mixed colours if you want to, however you wish to attack it. This one here reminds me of pencils that are all sitting with their points facing in. You can choose whether you want to use watercolour in those spaces or pencils, coloured pencils or coloured markers. But for today, I'm just going to use the black and leave the white spaces. And of course, my chalk pencil to do the highlights. So we'll just get started with a little bit of a breathing exercise just to centre ourselves and to just relax the body. So I normally just put my palms face up on the table, sit up straight in my chair, make sure my feet are flat on the ground. I start by taking a couple of deep breaths. In through the nose and hold, and then out through the mouth. When I'm doing that, I try and breathe in for 4, hold for 5, and exhale for 6 seconds. Or I count off those. It doesn't have to be literally seconds. So in, holding, and out. On my exhale, I like to just try and let go of any thoughts that I've got, anything that's bothering me from the day. And just think of things that I feel grateful for the time that I've got to sit here and draw. Okay, and once you feel that you're centered and you're comfortable, we shall start. Okay, so I'm going to move these items aside. I'm going to use a ruler today, just because there's a lot of straight lines with this particular design. And I probably won't use my pencil. I'll probably just go straight in with my pen. And I'm going to use the 05. I'm just going to have a thicker line on this today, but you can use the 01, which comes in the kit. It won't really matter. So putting my ruler on the corners of the tile that I'm using, if you're using a larger sheet of paper and you're only going to use part of the paper, just pencil yourself in an area that you want to draw in. Find the outermost reaches of that area and just put yourself a line across. And the other corners. And then just making sure that I'm going to intersect with that center dot where the other two intersect. I think I've got it fairly straight, but I don't know. We'll just do our best to get some straight lines in there. You can go to the trouble of measuring out all your intersections, but that's not for me. I'm just going to eyeball it. So once I've got my diagonals, my 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock, I then work on just dividing those sections. And I start by just dividing them in half. So I look at, I'll eyeball from this line to here and I sort of work out where I think that center line is, and same down here. Then make sure that I'm crossing over in the center before I do anything. Looks pretty good. And this is very clear ruler comes in handy. If you don't have a clear ruler, you might want to just mark those spots before you start. You know what I mean? If I use a solid ruler, I can't see whether I'm halfway between it. So, and I don't want to put a pen mark on there. But I could definitely, if I've only got that, I can definitely go, oh, okay, I think that looks about center. And that looks about center there. So I'm just going to try and get close to that. But I've got to get through that center line. So I'm going to slide it out to get there. And then you would put your ink in. That's making sense to everyone. So you can use normal ruler. It's a little bit fiddlier because you've got to measure it out. Now I've still got some spaces that are bigger than others. So I'm just going to continue going around through that center line and finding roughly that halfway mark. Always the last thing I look at before I start rolling a line in is I look to make sure I'm hitting the spot that I want to hit on the inside there. It's still a little large, so I'm just going to go on more on theirs. An important thing to note with this design is that we do need to have even number of spaces. If you're running from one side of the page to the other, you will inevitably have even spaces. But if you are stopping in the center, then you'll need to count and make sure you've got an even number of spaces. Okay, I'm putting my ruler away because I no longer need that. So the next part of our design involves putting our curves in. And you'll see from this that what we've got is a series of curves going under and then over, under, over, under, over. And we're just repeating that going around the circle. The next step from that is that the next curve that we move further down the line follows the same sequence. So if you've got an under on one, it will always be under. So I've got a bit of sun coming through my window now. So we'll just work where we think would be a good spot. So probably about here, I'll start my over, under, over, under, over, under, over. Now you notice that the distance from here to here will vary on all of them. It's not overly important, but as you get closer to meeting this point, you'll need to make sure that you're going to hit that spot. So let's have a look. Under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, and that's not an issue we're going to hit. Good, so that's the first step. Now, while I may be saying this under, over out loud, you get into the habit of when you're doing repetitive things, it's easier to remind yourself in your head, not necessarily out loud, of what your next step is, your current step, and then the next step will automatically come easy because you're repeating it over and over. So I'm going to make my next one here. Under, over. I won't repeat it out loud now. I'm just going to let you do it yourself in your head. you, but I went a bit funny here. I've gone sort of an under, but then it's reached up to an over. But that's not a problem. We can just continue the same line's going to mirror that line. Mirror, is that the word? Or it, I guess, is what we mean. So the next one up will go mid on a high there. And then this one will go high to low. But then the next one there is a low and under. Just continuing on the over and unders. You'll notice some of mine are shallow curves and some are sharp curves. It really doesn't make much difference. When you think consistency is nice, it's not always going to stand out on the bigger picture. All right, so you might want to just add in another one around these ones that have got a bit of length to them. You don't have to, it's up to you. I might just do it just for the fun of it. I've only got a partial one, so I'll just do over, under, and then that's it. That's all I'm going to see on that one there. Over here is a bit under. So I'm just going to put that in. I do an over here. I'm going to have to do an under on this one. It's very shallow. We'll see how it turns out anyway. There's always more paper where this came from if I'm not happy with it at the end of the day. Okay, so it's basically the design. So from this point, we need to work at filling in the colour. Now, I'm just going to do black and white today, but you will take whatever medium that you want to use to make your colours. If you're using a white chalk pencil for your highlights, just remember if you use a wax-based pencil, it doesn't take very well to it. So you may have a different type of white that you can use to put over the top, depending on what you've got. Just probably test it on a piece of paper and see that it gives you the effect that you want to achieve. All right, so I'm going to stick with my thick pen, my 05. Unless you've got a 10 or something like that handy. Actually, I do have a 10. A 10 right here, so I might use the 10 on, oh, I won't do it on the first row, I'll do it on the next rows around. So what I'm going to do is fill in my first section in black. You can pick up your color and do your first section. And at this point, you can, if you're using the black anyway, you can modify some of your curves if you feel you want to make them more prominent. That's the benefit, I guess, of using the black or the same color as the ink that you're drawing with. Okay, so next spot I'm going to leave white. And you're going to follow the circle round. You're just going to skip one so that you've got one contrasting colour, which is the white. And then one of whatever the colour is that you're using. And of course, you can make every one of them a different colour. It won't matter. You don't have to leave any white if you don't want to. I'm just trying to shield from the sun so that you can see the video. Sorry if it hasn't come through properly. And we just stuffed up that line, but that's okay. Find this process very meditative, I guess is the word. I have to concentrate on what I'm doing. So it's a focus type meditation, I guess. I'm concentrating on an item or a process. Not everybody's idea of meditation. A lot of people say you need to think of nothing when you're in meditation, but there's different types of meditation. Just remember that if you're not happy with that curve that you've got on this, you can adjust it because nobody knows where it used to be when you're working in the black and white anyway. Okay, for the next step, next row out is going to be the opposite. So it's this box here. So we're going to have black, white, black, white. So working in this next row, I'm just going to do my outside first. At any time you need to catch up, you can just pause the video, do what you have to do. And then resume the video when you're ready. Now, when I talked about correcting curves, because I'm using black and white, I can get away with it. I have to be mindful of the fact that if I start changing this curve right round to here, I'm going to affect it on this side where the meet up. So just be mindful of whether you can get away with it or whether you can't. So I'm going to go around the circle doing the same thing that we just did. Leaving a gap and then doing a solid colour. So if you want to pause your video, you can, and then pick it up again at the end of this row or this color, the whole coloring thing. If you don't need to see the whole thing, pause it. When you're working with your microns, you don't need a heavy hand. Just a light touch will let that ink flow nicely. I'm actually going to move to the size 10 nib because I don't have as much fine points to get into anymore. So you can see that's a considerably thicker nib compared to what we were using before. If you haven't got a thick nibbed micron, you can pick up a Sharpie. Just, you need to be aware that if you're going to use watercolor on any part of your work, please make sure that whatever pens you pick up to use are water resistant. Otherwise, your ink's going to run and you won't be very happy with the result normally. Sometimes smudged ink can look nice. I guess it depends on what the effect is you're after. I want to make sure that you're not getting ink smudges on your drawing by touching the spaces that you've just inked, like I just did, and got it on my fingers, and I'm trying to keep those fingers off the drawing. It can be difficult. This is a fairly fast drying ink, but you still need a few seconds. You can't just put your finger on it, which is what I did. Never mind. Those last few areas, not sure how everyone else is going with theirs. And then we get to the fun part, which is our shading. This pattern is really Knightsbridge on uh, a straight and wonky pattern combined, or string combined. Let's solve the problem of what to refer to the design as. Although it always resembles the pencils to me. And I lose track of true Knightsbridge effect. It's never hidden Knightsbridge. Oh, mine's on a bit of a card. Just with another drawing in the back. Okay. Just have a look around your tile. Make sure you haven't missed anything. I'm pretty sure I've got everything, although my shading could be a little sketchy. So just adjust where I can. We're not after perfection. It doesn't exist. We just want it to be pleasing to us, because that's how we've done it for. Now I've got a bit of a splodge that's gone over the edge, so I'm going to have to just smooth that line out. This one's a little bit wonky. Okay, I think I'm fairly happy with that. So we will look at our shading. Okay, so you just need to give your ink 5 minutes or so to dry, because once we start shading with our pencil, you don't want to drag any of that ink that you've just inked into the white areas or the whiter areas. So I'm fairly happy with mine. And it's normally not an issue. It's just that we've put down large areas, and sometimes that can cause the paper to soften, and you don't want to be dragging the paper around. Okay, so the way we shade this is, you'll notice on this particular design here that we've given it, it seems to look like it's raised in the middle, because we've created this highlight down the middle, but we've shaded into the valleys here. So where our line is, we've gone really dark on the line and then a little bit lighter as we come up. Hard to see in some of them, but you see how, you see this one here, dark, and then you lighten up as you go. Now the trick to that is our trusty tortillon. So we lay down our graphite and then we move it with our tortillon, and I'll show you what I mean by that. I'm going to take this one first, and I'm just going to put ink down, graphite down. I'm going to skip the dark areas, but you could actually get some pencil on them. It wouldn't hurt too much. It's just that a normal graphite pencil like this will give a little bit of reflection if it hits the black. So I try and keep it off the black. Or if I really just want to be quick and go all the way along, I use what's called the matte pencils. So this is a Pitt graphite matte from Faber-Castell, and that's an 8B, which is a darker finish. So I'll show you what it looks like with normal graphite. And just make sure that your graphite gets right up against the line. You don't want to have a little white section. You can't see it up there. Yeah. So the reason I'm not getting lighter coming out is I just want to show you what happens with the tortilla. So when I'm doing a long section like that and I want it to fade lighter, I work in circles so that it drags the graphite up a bit till I get the desired effect. I'm very happy with that one. To me, it's easier if I turn my tile around because I can concentrate on making it dark on that line. When I'm stretching across, my hand tends to work from the left across to the right of the page. So it's harder to get it lighter. Does that make sense? Whereas if I'm working along the line and pushing away, it's the pushing away section is going to, the pushing away motion is going to lighten the graphite. I feel like I'm babbling away here, but trust me, I've done it. So again, down here, you just got to be careful that you don't fill the whole section because we need that white in the middle for our highlight. You could drag that further if you want to. And if you wanted to take a darker pencil, even a black pencil, just to get a little bit darker right on the edge. Just make sure it's a pencil that's going to move. Like you don't want a line of black solid color there. That's what I mean by move. It's got to be either a shading type pencil or a graphite. So I think you can see there you've got some movement with the black. It makes it look lower here, raised, lower. Now, having those two black areas there, we haven't got any sort of dimension on that yet. That's where our white chalk comes in. Normally I wouldn't put it on now. I would wait till I finish everything else. In fact, we'll wait. I just wanted to show you a complete one, but no, let's not get too excited. We'll just continue around the circle. So we're moving around the circle, putting graphite down. As close to that edge as possible. Make sure you try and touch that edge. And you work however suits you. Now, my shadows will be taller on these wider sections. When I say you work how it suits you, I mean you might want to work in one strip going out that way, or you might want to work around in a circle. They both have their benefits. Sometimes it's best to do the inside of the tile before you do the outside so that your hand is not smudging the graphite. And notice that I'm holding my pencil on an angle. I'm holding it on the side. I don't want a hard line. I don't want to indent the paper with it. I'm doing it on the side of the pencil. So I'm applying color. I'm not applying pressure, if that makes sense. Okay, so now I'm going to work my way out If you've got any damage to your paper, you see that this one's been, so it's been held in a clip or something like that. It will show when you shade, unfortunately. That's why we try and treat all our suppliers with the respect they deserve. And papers should be laid flat and kept dust free. Nothing worse than reaching for a bit of watercolor paper and finding once you apply your water and your color that you find you're dragging dust around, or cat hairs and dog hairs and bits of life that happens in all our homes. So store what you can as safely as you can. I store all my pens, my microns, and whether it be jelly roll pens or whatever I've got, I store them all flat like this. I don't have any sitting upright. If I have them upright, then the ink will flow away from the nib, or you have them up this way and you run the risk of them leaking out of the nib. So I always lay them flat. And I haven't gone back in with my tortillon yet, so I'm just applying all the graphite at once, and then I'll do the tortillon all at once. And remember, if you put a larger shadow here, the shadow on this section here should be larger than the one earlier on that same stripe. And something we don't do in Zentangle is that we don't use, what do you call it? A light source for our shadows. So like, I'm not trying to, if I was to use a light source, I would be saying, okay, my light source is at this point here on my drawing coming in, which means that my shadow would be darker on this side and I would have light hitting my object on this side. Does that make sense? Because I've got this hump. I'm trying to create this hump effect on each of them. It's like it's a raised pencil. So that pencil there with the light hitting it on that side, I have no shadow. It's probably a bit difficult to see on that colour. And the blue, we've got light on this side, but a bigger shadow on this side. Still hard to see. But you get the idea. Anyway, that's not what we do in Zentangle. You can, and there's plenty of Zentangle artists that will do that. But we don't force that upon our thinking, because we really just want to go with the flow. We don't want to have any constraints in what we do. The whole reason for shadowing, for shading, is to give a dimensional effect, so it doesn't have to technically follow any sort of light source. So I've got all my graphite down. I'm going to take the tortilla and I'm going to work from the center out. So that's the one that we've finished. So I'm just going to use those circular motions. And you need to at least keep a little bit of white in that center, remember that. So just move your hand around to, or twist your tile is easier. And rather than do circular motions on these little ones here, I tend to find that up and down motion is easier to get the graphite along the length. The circular motions will give me more height to my shading. But because I'm really stuck for room there, I'm not looking for the height. Okay, so out to the next one. Now this time I'm going to do the circular shadows because I'm happy to get some height there. If you don't want to keep turning your tile, just work on the left side of each one. Sorry, the right side, if you're right-handed. If you're left-handed, then vice versa. And then you can turn it around and work the other direction. And if you don't think it's dark enough and you want to go back with another shade on there, you can. You can do whatever you like. It's your tile. But to me, that's not enough graphite on that section there. So I'm just going to go in. First of all, I'm just going to go a little harder there. A little bit more pressure. And that's going to give me a darker spot. And I can drag that graphite out. Hoping you're starting to see your drawing come to life here. It's hard not to hit the black ink with your tortillon. It happens sometimes, but I try not to deliberately hit it. Reason being, that paper's still quite damp. Although my ink's dry, the paper can be softer there because it's saturated with the ink. You don't need a lot of pressure on this tortillon. I tend to find that my hand will start cramping, and then I know I've been putting too much pressure on it, and the nib of it will start to bend. So look after your graphite and look after your tortillons. It'll last longer. I mean, some of these things have lasted me years, but others, not so much. Okay, so I'm now working on the other side of mine. If you find you've put down too much graphite or you've dragged it too far into the center of your piece, you can use an eraser. Now, a normal eraser will be square and it will take out too much. So I tend to use these molded type erasers, you know, the kneaded eraser is what it's called. So if I find I put down too much graphite, I can squeeze it to a point and just dab it. And that's enough to lift off some of the unwanted shading. The other good thing there is in the way of erasers is Tombow have this mono zero eraser, and it has this very small nib. So compared to this, it's much the same. Sorry. It's quite a small eraser. It's going to take less off than what you can get with this. This is, unless you've got this into a very, very sharp point, which is just going to bend as soon as it hits the table. Yeah, so they're both good. They both have their uses. And when you're shading, it's one of those things you got to keep track of what you're up to, because it can be really easy to miss one. Maybe to put down some white chalk. Now this thing's getting harder and harder to work with. I might work with the other one. So this one's got a nice point to it. If it doesn't, you want to try and get yourself one of these General's All Arts erase sharpeners. They are brilliant for sharpening the General's chalk pencils. A normal sharpener will not sharpen them, they just continue to break. So if you're having that problem, look for the General's sharpener. I'm not saying there's no other sharpener on the market that will do it. That's the only sharpener I own that will actually sharpen the chalk pencils. So with a nice fine point, I'm going to start on my first line. This is going to give me my highlight. Now, I don't have to just use this. Plenty of people use the jelly roll. I'm not always excited with the finish I get on the jelly roll, so I will show you the pencil. We can add jelly roll on top of our pencil, that's not a problem. Let's work with our pencil first. So I need to use it with the pencil point being upright. So if I was shading, I would have it on the side, but I'm not. I'm going to use a sharp line on this centerpiece. So I want on the center, I just want this one line on the dark spots. Oh, I've just broken my tip. Let's see how we go with that. So try and keep that line on the black just in the center. So where the light would hit, and you would have a reflection. Once you've got that, shake off any excess pencil. And now I'll move out to my next row. So from here, it's going to hit about here. As understand, so I'm following that line out here. That's where I want it to be. Now, this one could be a little bit thicker because the item is wider, your shadow and your highlight's wider. So, does it make sense? On this blue one that I did, I couldn't see enough of the white on the blue. The blue's not as dark as the black. So I found it was easier for me to use the jelly roll on that one. So you've got an example there of a little bit of white pencil under it, but then the jelly roll on top. I'm just going to put that to the side while we continue on this one. So the next string going out has a white center. So I'm just going to pick the middle and do the fine line here. It can be a little bit thicker as it goes out. And then out here in the center, I've still got this mark on the paper. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, I can't change it. I just got to work with it. And my shadow will be wider as it goes out. Next line, I've got one here and it's going to hit about here. Hopefully that's making sense for you. I like to do my finest lines first while my point is still fine enough on my pencil, my chalk pencil. That's why I've gone around that center section first. But I think at this point, I might continue on this next row around because I'm starting to lose that point. And I'm always reluctant to sharpen these things, as you can see, because there's not a lot left to them. I know they didn't start off life as a full-size pencil either. And Zentangle pencils we work with are probably about that length in total. They're probably half a normal pencil. And they're made that length just to fit in the palm of your hand when you're shading that. So it's just really comfortable. All right, so we've gone around that second row. So now I'm just going to fill in where that would land is here. This one here would be over here, so it's not on the tile. I've missed it. One thing to remember with the chalk is it will come off fairly easy, so try not to touch those spots. That's it. Okay, so let's clean up this mess. Get rid of the loose pencil or the chalk. So you may be happy with the finish, you may not. It's definitely given it dimension. I think for me, I would like to see some darker shading to the edge. So I'll go back in with this pencil and finish those edges just to give a bit more dimension. I'm not too sure about whether I'd use the jelly roll. I can show you what it looks like. We always just clean up the tip before we use it. So just scribble it on some paper, make sure it's not messy. And then we just run it down. Not sure if you can see it. It's on this row here. Maybe you can see it, maybe you can't. Because I've started it, I'm going to continue it. One of the things with the jelly rolls is it will scratch off whatever is under it. So if you do a second line on the jelly roll, you'll find that you're just scraping it off. Remember, you can't get your hand on this. This is going to be like wet ink. You need to work your way around the tile where you're not going to get your hand on the existing jelly roll. My jelly roll is preferred by a lot of Zentangle teachers. There are many other white pens available, one of which is the Uniball Signia, which looks like this. Also does the same thing. And there is also the Posca Uni pen, and you would get that in the smallest nib possible, which is that particular one, and that is a 0.7 mil. Not sure if you can see that there, 0.7. You'll find what works best for you. Gel pens are just completely different to what we use in the microns. They have a longer drying time. Any gel pen's going to be like that though. As you're applying liquid, and it's just I just find it scratches off the chalk I've just put down. So seems kind of pointless, but you can't add the chalk over the top of it because it, I suppose you could once it's completely dry. But you definitely wouldn't do it while it was wet. So these ones that are dried, I'm just going to go over. The key to these jelly rolls is a light touch. So start the ink rolling on just some scrap piece of paper. So I'm finding it's applying better the second time around. Firstly, because I'm going lighter because I'm worried about scratching off what I had there. And secondly, because I think it's finally starting to flow. I should have probably played with it a bit more. Remember not to get your finger on any of the wet ink. Okay. I'm going to lift that up and just show you. So apart from the fact that I don't have enough dark shading, I'm fairly happy with the tile. I'm just going to go through and put some more dark shading on it. So I'm using the Pitt Graphite Matte in 8B. You can use a different one, but I'm not even going to bother dragging this out with my tortillon. So I'm just going to go really dark at the edge and then just lighten my pressure as I move away from the line. So can you see the difference between that one and the others? Let's have a look what happens if I move the graphite around. Not a huge effect. I can go darker again. Or I can just say, hey, I'm happy with that. You'll notice I'm using up and down strokes on this, and I have done with most of my shading on this because it's like a narrow edge. But there's plenty of times when it cools as you move away from the edge, just to go around in circles if you like. Or you just drag it out just to soften the edge. You don't want to have lines on the edge. If you find it's looking grainy or lines evident, definitely hit it with the tortillon because that's not what we want to get. Just you let your gel pens dry before you do any more of this, or at least make sure you're happy with your shading before you apply your gel pen, because you will inevitably drag the gel ink into the wrong locations. Apologise for the length of this video. I've probably done this design much bigger than what this one was, obviously, but it, it takes some time to get the shading right. It was really a simple one for us to draw. It's just that shading, just to give it the oomph that you want, dimension. If you gave it enough dimension the first time round, you've probably finished the video and closed down, and I'm just sitting here by myself, shading away. But virtually this is it after all the shading's done. And you just sign your tile. And right on the back of it, where you found the video, the name of the tangle, which is Knightsbridge. I will write that down for you so that you don't have a problem with the spelling. We also note who constructed or deconstructed the pattern, and the pattern is by Zentangle. HQ, I put down for headquarters. So it's an original Zentangle design. So every time a pattern is created or deconstructed, which means the step out for it is created, the person who did that puts a name to it, and we all give them the respect by tagging them in the designs that we recreate. So nobody has a problem with you using their designs. It's a very much shared community. It's just please don't try and claim someone else's drawing or design as being your own. And there you have it. We are finished for today. So I hope you were inspired to give this a go. And I look forward to seeing you again in another video. Thank you. Bye for now.